Welcome to another installment of Careers That Matter. Joining me now is Robert Barnard, the co-founder of Youthful Cities. Robert, welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here.
As co-founder, I guess you are also running the organization. So what does your job look like on a day-to-day basis? What do you do?
Right now at Youthful Cities, we've got about 22 members of the team, the core team. So managing 22 people.
Who are on salary.
Who are on salary.
Yeah.
So it's big operation at the moment. And that means, I've got a kind of core team that I'm working directly with. I've got an executive director who's working with the other half of the organization. And it's really, day-to-day basis, it's making sure that we've got a clarity of what we're trying to achieve and that we're making progress along that path. And also, I like to stay open to opportunities as they come. So keeping an eye out for what's happening, what we're hearing, what we're seeing, and reacting to what happens. Like, as a very quick example, we've got a summit coming up here in Vancouver, and the deadline for summit applications was Sunday night. Mm-hmm. On Friday, I think we had 100 applications. We had an internet or an influencer on Instagram who posted about the summit, and by Sunday we had almost 600 applications for the summit. So
yeah,
all of a sudden we had to. I see that as an amazing opportunity that people were that interested in joining what's going to be a great event. But it also means, as an organization, we need to figure out, okay, how are we going to deal with a much bigger number of people that we need to look through.
So you're an HR specialist because you got 22 people working for you.
I don't know if anyone's an HR specialist, but I try.
Well, okay, but you still have to run a team.
Yep.
Clearly, you have to do something about raising money, whether it's selling sponsorships or anything else. So you're a salesperson.
Yep.
Problem solver.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I try.
Visionary.
I try to look ahead for sure.
Mouthpiece for the organization,
as you can see.
Yeah. and on top of that, do you have a board that you report to?
I don't in this case. Yeah.
Right.
So we're what's called a social enterprise, or we call ourselves a social enterprise. It's a recognized concept in many places around the world, but not necessarily as much in Canada. It just means
it's about doing good.
Yeah, it's about having a central purpose, in our case, about making cities better places for young people to live, work, and play. And we've chosen to go down that path as opposed to setting up as a charity or being just a for-profit organization. So we think this hybrid model is a better model to get things done, and it's served us well for the last 10 years.
So let's go back to the beginning of your career. Did you go to university?
I did.
What did you study?
What do you think?
History.
Close. Geography.
Okay.
So I did a geography degree, big fan of geography. I love the human geography. So there's a connection from that to what I'm doing now in some respects, because it's looking at...
Well, yeah, but it's not a straight line. So
it's not a straight line.
You go study geography. Where'd you wind up working when you got out of university?
Well, I didn't study. As I say, it took me 5 years to get my 3-year degree. I started my first business when I was 19, and nothing to do with geography, which it was a clothing business. Although my clothing business ended up, one of the designs we had lots of maps on it. So that's how it connected to geography. But so I was really, an entrepreneur at the age of 19, and I've been a serial entrepreneur since then.
Okay. How long did you have the clothing company?
About 4 years. It was beachwear, it was après ski wear, it was boxer shorts. It was kind of all in that range. And once in a while I have this fantasy that I'm going to relaunch it.
So
someday,
what'd you do? Just wind it down and start another company?
Yeah, it was. I was trying to manufacture everything in Canada, and that at that time was pretty tough to do, and it just wasn't making wasn't making enough money for me to survive, and so I ended up winding it down. And then I took a year off and worked helping a new golf club get launched, and then I launched a charity. So a pretty big shift from selling clothing to running a national youth charity, trying to get young people more involved in Canada's future.
So in keeping with where you're at now. But you didn't stay doing that because you mentioned off camera earlier that you lived in the UK. What took you there?
Well, I did the charity for 4 years, which was an incredible experience, and met lots of young people, learned a lot about young people. And then after that experience, decided that everyone kept asking me, what's with all these young people? We don't get them. This was back when Gen X was the young
Right.
people. And governments asking me these questions. I was going to conferences and they were asking me to be speaker. So I brought together a couple of friends of mine who were kind of at the similar stage in life, and we created a innovation consultancy called Decode. And that company was there to generate insights and ideas all about Generation X.
And that's what you're doing in the UK.
And that took me, we went from Generation X to millennials, and learning about that generation and working with governments and companies and NGOs in Canada and then more around the world. And that's what took me to the UK, was to launch that company in the UK. And while I was in the UK is when the concept of the idea of Youthful Cities came to me.
And you've created that now, and you love that process of building, clearly.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. It's how would I describe, almost like a fun stress. It's definitely not easy.
No, it is not.
And building a team, bringing people together, learning rapidly something new is pretty exciting. The launch of Youthful Cities was an amazing experience because we started with a really simple question. We said, what's the best city in the world for young people?
Answer?
Well, it turned out to be a really hard answer because you got to figure out what do you mean by a city, and then what are the topics, and how would you measure that? Which means you have to go to young people and ask them how they would measure it. And then when you figured out how they would measure it, you need to go and collect all the data. And then you need to once you collect the data, you need to pull it all together and then say that this city is better than that city. So, but we had this amazing team of about 10 or 15 young people who were completely dedicated to coming up with that answer, collecting data from around the world. We hired young people, and when that time was 25 cities. We said, we're just going to go get this. We'll be the first ones in the world to ever look at cities from a youth perspective in a quantitative way and say this one's better than that one. So, and when in November 2013 we launched that with the Financial Times in London, which was the first Youthful Cities ranking of best city in the world for youth.
Which was?
Well, you're going to be surprised at which one it was. It was actually Toronto. Globally. You're right, I am surprised. I know.
Yeah.
But at the time I was living in London, so I was okay to have, it was somewhat distant, and the data was all collected from people around the world. But, London was right up there, and New York was right up there. So, and we found 2 years later, Toronto had actually dropped down to number 6, and London and New York and Berlin took the top 3 spots.
So what do you think has been the most important trait that you have that has kept you going and led to your current success?
That's a good question. I think part of it is I guess being able to gather people around an idea and making sure that I've got a really interesting, diverse group of perspectives around that idea. That's been something that I've carried with me for a really long time. It might be just, if Youthful Cities being an example, it just seemed like an opportunity. And I probably should have thought through things a little bit more, but
No,
maybe
you
not.
wouldn't- you
Maybe
wouldn't have
that's
done it.
maybe that's the key, is that if you don't if you just get started, which is often what I say to young people who want to be entrepreneurs, that just start. Like that's my advice. Just start.
I mean, 100% agreement around that. Just get started, because you can't know what's going to happen next week, because what happens next week is only related to what happened this week. So you can't predict.
Yeah.
Just get going.
Yeah, I think, and that's sort of stood me well. And sometimes it doesn't work out, but maybe that's just because of the time and place, and ideas can come back again.
Well, Ronald Reagan, one of his objectives when he was president of the United States was to get away from this focus of only celebrating people who succeed and saying, no, the real heroes are those who try. And because you tried, you've created something that wouldn't have existed, and it can branch off in ways that you can't even begin to anticipate. You're igniting change in the world around you just by doing it. So I agree with you.
Yeah.
Just start.
Yeah. Thank you.